Our poet tonight is Kate Rushin, and she's a Connecticut resident of East Hampton, Connecticut. And she has a BA from Oberlin, an MFA from Brown University, and she's taught at Wesleyan and at the Hartford Academy of the Arts. Her work is widely anthologized, and she's a recipient of the Rose Lowe Rome Memorial Poetry Prize and the Grolier Poetry Prize. Her poem, The Bridge Poem, has appeared in This Bridge Called My Back, Writings by Radical Women of Color, a groundbreaking anthology. She is the author also of a poetry book called The Black Backups. Kate has read at the Hillstead Museum and at the Geraldine Dodge Poetry Festival, so we feel very honored that she's agreed to read for us tonight. So I welcome Kate Rushin.
Hello, everyone. Hi, it's really nice to be here. And thank you for being here. Because it is September 11th, I'd like to start with a poem by Robert Hayden, who was at one time the poetry consultant to the Library of Congress, and that's the position that's now known as Poet Laureate. "O Daedalus, fly away home," and he dedicated it to his daughter and wife, Maya and Julie. Drifting night in the Georgia pines, coon skin drum and jubilee banjo. Pretty Melinda, dance with me. Night is Juba, night is Congo. Pretty Melinda, dance with me. Night is an African juju man weaving a wish and a weariness together to make two wings. Oh, fly away home, fly away. Do you remember Africa? Oh, cleave the air, fly away home. My gran, he flew back to Africa, just spread his arms and flew away home. Drifting night in the windy pines. Night is a laughing, night is a longing. Pretty Melinda, come to me. Night is a morning juju man weaving a wish and a weariness together to make two wings. Oh, fly away home. It's the poet Robert Hayden. I was listening to the radio today and going online, and I learned that it's estimated that 20% of U.S. citizens knew someone at the World Trade Center. And I thought about my connections and thought about our individual connections to these big events in history. So I read that for Eddie Calderon, WTC Security, who I met once, with whom I danced to Tito Puente at the Copacabana to celebrate his birthday. It's for Frank DiMartini, architect, WTC construction manager, who had a nice smile, who was my high school classmate, who signed my yearbook. I also read it for Michael R. Richards, WTC LMCC artist and sculptor, who was one of 15 artists in residence on site that day, whose work I admire. I also learned today that some accounts say that there were people from 90 different countries, and other accounts say 115 different countries were affected. So this is my work in progress. Birthday at the WTC Marriott, July 2011. Photos developed after the fact. I held them in my hand. My artistic shots of Twin Towers from down below, honeycomb of concrete, children practicing West African dance in the courtyard where my cousin Sandra Marie loved to hear jazz after work, and the fountain. This is gone, I ask myself, no one in particular, the photos in my hand. This doesn't exist anymore? And what about the people at the hotel, the restaurant staff at breakfast, the doorman I joked with as I went in and out, wearing a change of outfit each time? Where are they now? Did they make it? Are they safe? To the people of 9/11. So I want to thank everyone for your hospitality. I want to thank the Guilford Poets Guild, especially Evelyn Atreya, Nan Manili, Audrey Fitting, and Pat O'Brien. Also want to thank the Connecticut River Poets. Pat is part of, connected to both groups. And I also want to thank Kathy Green of the gallery here. It's really beautiful and it's really special to read here in this room filled with art. The exhibit is called Sense, Time, Place, Landscapes of New England and the Hudson River Valley, and the artist is Ellen Fountain. I decided, since I was reading in the gallery, since we're here in the gallery tonight, that I wanted to read two ekphrastic poems that I wrote in Connecticut River Poets. The first one is called The Artist Speaks, Ann Bell, Free Person of Color, 1814 to 1885. This was a painting that was in an exhibit at the Florence Griswold Museum, the same reading that's coming up on Sunday. And this is from a painting called Albany from Van Rensselaer's Island in 1850. And very little was known about Ann Bell, but this is how I imagined it might be to be a woman of color painting in 1850. Okay. The Artist Speaks. From the moment I first saw W.G. Wall's engraving, I was enthralled. I'd only known that scene from our neighborhood, our home on Arbor Hill. What a strange thrill to see our changing world depicted so. Quiet, outsized trees, men going about their work, transporting cattle by flatboat to the island farm. In the distance, spires. Opportunity to draw and paint was a gift that I, a woman, born during the time of bondage, could not take for granted. Providence and my God-given desire to learn led me to my work. I am grateful for color, canvas, instruction. Some dismiss my efforts as those of mimicker. Some dismiss my efforts as those of mimicker. Are we not taught to model ourselves on the master? Are we not at liberty? Permit me, if you will. My eye, my determination, my patience figured in the composition of this glowing mystery. Look through this gilded oval aperture into a world that no longer exists. I invite you to look closely. There is so much to see. And this is a second poem that I wrote with the Connecticut River Poets. This is also from an exhibit that was at the Florence Griswold Museum. I didn't know until that exhibit that there was a first Mrs. Woodrow Wilson, and she was a painter. En plein air for First Lady Ellen Louise Axon Wilson, May 15th, 1860 to August 16th, 1914. From this window, I can look out on the rose garden, my painting on the ground. I attend to my work however I can. Hospitality, too, is necessary art. 600 guests must be attended. I do my duty as I am able. Mother and father encouraged. Miss Fairchild taught me well. I captured the Paris bronze in freehand drawing, brought it home to Rome, Georgia. As Woodrow tells it, we met in church. After the engagement, I was off to the Art Students League in New York. He wrote letter after letter. After our marriage, his teaching, his career, and 3 girls, I found myself in charge of a household of 10. When we lost my younger brother, Eddie, along with his wife and child, in the accident, I didn't know how I would go on. Woodrow couldn't bear to see me blue, so it was he who suggested the summer sojourn on the Connecticut shoreline. I loved Mrs. Griswold's colony in Old Lyme. I found respite by the river. There was painting, drawing, so much talk and laughter. The 4th summer, I decided to move from the house to a studio of my own. I did not write my husband with the news. There remains that part of me unfettered, answering only this empty moment, my promise to myself, my wordless art. This rutted road, this unpretty sky is mine. When I ventured to submit my work again, I chose Edward A. Wilson in memoriam, my brother. Of course, I was thinking of myself as well. Had I been able to open the school, had I been able to paint as freely. But je ne regrette pas. I have been blessed. What a day. Woodrow carried my easel. The girls slathered me in citronella. They put a hat on my head and let me be. Thank you. So one of the things I've been aware of, I guess, when I think of sense and time and place, I realize I'm always aware of anniversaries and dates, and I've been very aware that 75 years ago there was quite a lot happening in the world, and I learned that it was the 75th anniversary of the publication of Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston a couple of years ago. This year is the 75th anniversary of The Grapes of Wrath. It's the 75th anniversary of the opening of The Wizard of Oz, the movie. And it's also the 75th anniversary of Miss Marian Anderson's concert on Easter Sunday in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial. So I want to read a couple of poems related to these anniversaries. So I'll begin with My Lord, What a Morning for Miss Marian Anderson. The title is from a spiritual, and Miss Anderson wrote an autobiography, and the autobiography has the same title. Growing up in South Jersey, I knew Miss Anderson as a Philadelphia artist. And it wasn't until I came to Connecticut that I realized that I learned that she lived in Danbury for 50 years. Okay. So, but we begin in South Philly. My Lord, what a morning, 1897. Marriage bed, birth bed, rented room in a rented red brick row house, stone steps scrubbed clean, sidewalk swept and washed, curbstones and cobblestones gleaming in the cool early sun, God's gift in the cry of a little brown baby girl, joy in the morning. My Lord, what a morning. My father's mother lived in Philly, and so I grew up with the brick and the cobblestones and the trolleys. And my mother's mother was born in 1995, so I really felt like I knew something about Marian Anderson and her life. And I had the opportunity to go to her house. It's always good to go to a place because you just see things you can't learn any other way. So what I learned when I went to visit Miss Anderson's house in South Philly is that when you stand on the stoop and look down the narrow cobblestone street with the brick row houses, Union Baptist Church, where she sang, is right there. Okay. So 1921, Union Baptist Church. Rich dark pews sweeping in an arc, peaked windows up to the sky, choir loft almost to heaven. Leave your coveralls, put on your suit and tie, angle your fedora. Leave your janitress uniform, put on your flowered hat with the wide brim. Polish your good shoes, exchange your school dress for a Sunday best. The brothers and the sisters collect $17.11 to see to it that our Marian gets her singing lessons. Close your eyes and sing. Raise your voice to Jesus, free as a bird. My Lord, what a morning. And of course, when she started traveling to sing and earn money, she was dealing with Jim Crow and segregation. So this is the 20s through the 60s, touring in America. Over here, John. Here you go, boy. He's got you and me, brother, in his hands. Come here, Mary. Get that, Anna. He's got you and me, sister, in his hands. Soot and dirt in the Jim Crow car. Choose your seat and sit down. We don't take colored. We don't allow colored. Another way will be made. You have to go through the Jim Crow door. Never said a mumbling word. We don't hire colored. We don't sell to colored. He's got everybody here in his hands. Choose your seat and sit down. My Lord, what a morning. One of the things I learned when I was doing research on Miss Anderson is that she was married to a pioneering African-American architect. 1943, Mariana Farm, Danbury, Connecticut. He said that he traveled 10,000 miles back and forth through Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey before he found the right house that the owner would sell to them. He was very fair-skinned, as we say. So sometimes people wouldn't realize he was African American until Miss Anderson came to see the house. Okay. 1943, Mariana Farm, Danbury, Connecticut. Back home in Philadelphia, shut up in a tiny bathroom at the top of the stairs in grandmother's house on Martin Street, I dreaded that anyone would hear me practicing. My husband found this land, made this space. He designed and built this studio just for me. Now I record. I arrange at the baby grand piano under his elegant curved ceiling. I sing as I need to sing. As I work, I enjoy the view out these large windows, the lawn, the pond, the fruit trees, our dogs. In winter, his stone fireplace keeps me warm. Orpheus King Fisher. What a perfect name. My Lord, what a morning. So you can go to the Historical Society in Danbury, because her friends and the state worked together to save the studio. So although the house is in private hands, you can go into the studio right on the main street in Danbury. Yeah. And so here's the last section. She passed in 1993. Her nephew, who she helped raise, was James DePriest, the conductor, and he was working at the Portland Symphony. And so when she was unable to live by herself, James DePriest brought her to Portland, where she passed. And he actually passed not that long ago. So this is what I imagine she might have said or thought. 1993, The Gift, Portland, Oregon. Our voice was a gift from God. At first, we didn't see it, but how fitting. The 1939 Easter Sunday Lincoln Memorial Concert was presented before 75,000 souls, another 6 million at their radios. All of us under the great God's great sky. By and by, the daughters of the American Revolution would reverse their white artists-only ban. Years later, we chose to begin our farewell tour at Constitution Hall. We had no wish to benefit from the DAR's misfortunes. We had learned over time to take good care, having been appointed steward of the gift. What we had was singing. Our mother, Anna, was steadfast in her faith. A way was made, a way was found. As the old spirituals promised, we can choose our seat and sit down. He's got everybody here right in his hands. He's got you and me, sister, in his hands. My Lord, what a morning. Thank you. Yeah, it's Miss Anderson. she would refer to herself in the plural. She never said I. She always referred to herself, and I guess her team and her family as we. She was, at the time, in 1955, she finally received an invitation to sing at the Metropolitan Opera. She was 60 years old, so everyone thought. But then later on it was found that because she had to work to support her family, she was in her 20s when she graduated from high school. And so she adjusted her age. So I think she was actually 65 when she had her debut at the Met. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So, the other thing, you know, when I look back to see what was going on in 1939, and you know, there's lots of wars and rumors of wars and wars getting ready to start. So I decided to read this poem tonight. It's called Comparative History, Our Stories. When I look into your face, I swear I see Russia and Romania. I see thousands of faces looking out from your eyes. I see a peasant woman, her legs strong from the fields, drinking tea by the stove. I see a man leaning over his heavy book. I see a young girl laughing from deep in her belly. I see them. I see Molly, Rachel, Goldie, and Flora. I see Harry, Albert, Carl, and Ben. And when I look at you, I feel my own people gazing out from my eyes. Look, and you will see a bondswoman, her legs strong from the fields, drinking tea by the hearth. Look and see a man rocking over his heavy book. See a young girl laughing from way deep in her belly. Look, and you can see the Ashanti, the Bambara, the Fulani. You can see Mamie, Amma, Akiba, and Snow Pearl. You can see Walter, Kojo, Moses, and Ned. Thousands of people stretch out behind us like the cars of a freight. How do we compare? The final solution, that peculiar institution, the slave ship, the death train, the gas chamber, the lynching tree, the Amistad revolt, the Warsaw uprising, the burned book, the smashed drum, Bergen-Belsen, and Cape Coast Castle. Do we dare compare our terrible histories? It would have been easy for neither of us to be here. If someone had stayed a day too long, if someone had left a day too soon, but here we are, meeting by chance as people do. The daughter of Marilyn and Birdie, Saul and Jack, the daughter of Roxy and Addie, George and Isaac. We are here to witness the living and the dead in each other's eyes. So I'm from South Jersey, and my dad's family is from Georgia, from Atlanta and Macon. And as I mentioned, his mother, his family came up to Philadelphia. And I'll read the poem I wrote for my father's mother. Her name is Roxy Wiggins Rushin Edwards. She had 9 brothers, so everybody called her sister. Okay? Making way for sister. For 30 miles, the string of cars in my grandmother's funeral procession laces painfully through the red-lighted intersections. It's some kind of a miracle. No trucks ram the hearse, no sirens scream, no one cuts us off. Even in the neighborhoods like the ones she worked days for decades with no insurance, they pause, they take note, they wonder. They all make way for the gal from Sly County, Georgia. Finally, they make way for her to pass. She saved the money, though it wasn't enough. She chose the undertaker and the plot close to her girl, Ruth. She could go, she said, for 3 days without eating, and she did. What could we do but step aside? We step aside. We make way for her to pass. And I have a poem for my dad. My dad was a fisherman, right? Freshwater fisherman. It's called Reeling Memories for My Father. No child can imagine how it comes to this present fragmented, then lashed together by the woman who chose us, the woman we don't remember except in snatches. You had it right after all, Dad. People pick up a book of poems, flip through it, put it down. But a story, who knows? They might keep reading. It might get turned into a movie one day. In the movie, you stand in front of the sink, your back to me. You are scaling porgies, perch, pike, butterfish, and carp. You stand in that same narrow space where my mother hunched against the inevitable. Flashback. Load your green Rambler with night crawlers, bloodworms, minis, anise cornmeal mush, your weekend case of Ballantine. Head out for Friendship Bridge, a creek called Sanctuary. Jump cut to senior care, fish sticks and canned shakes. Split screen. I sneak your car keys from your dresser, jimmy my mother's cedar chest, hoping to find your stash before the hustlers come back to get the rest. Instead, I find bachelor, widower Polaroids hidden in a jar. Flashback. I watch you watch my mother undress, her back to both of us. You pretend sleep, I pretend I can't see in the mirror. Dissolve. I take the black-handled tailoring shears, compliments of Booker T trade and the GI Bill. Shred the last of your private single man's life. A daughter should never know such gospel. After you forgot this house and the heavy mahogany furniture she chose, you remembered what her casket cost and the exact amount your father died owing you. But listen, you taught me to bait and cast and reel. You remembered me and your good hat. You joked. You were a gentleman. You remember the night your unit shipped out for France, and you always remembered to miss your brother. So next week, I'm going home to South Jersey because my grandfather and our family are being honored with a banquet in our little town of Lawnside, New Jersey. And it's been quite something trying to connect with the family members scattered all around. Some of us haven't talked to each other for a while. And it's been really an experience looking for photographs and pulling them together. And when I go down there next week, I'm going to read this poem at the banquet. It's called On the Eastern Shore. My mother's family and a lot of the people from our town are from the Eastern Shore of Maryland. It's a little place called Lawnside that was incorporated in 1926. But the community itself goes way back, I think all the way to the 1600s. My church is Mount Pisgah AME Church, was established in 1792. And so previously the town was called Snow Hill, and it was also called Freehaven. And I had a chance to go to the Eastern Shore of Maryland and visit Snow Hill, where my grandfather's family was from. And when I was in that place, I felt like it taught me something about my grandparents that I couldn't have understood any other way. So on the Eastern Shore, here moving through Dorchester, Worcester, and Talbot counties on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. Here in the land of Harriet Tubman, our Moses. Here in the land of Frederick Douglass, our great orator. Here in the low, flat land of my mother's people, my heart pumps hard, my breath comes quick. Despite the crab joints, sports bars, and strip malls, I can see the wide, wide fields. I can still see the wide, wide fields. Despite the crab joints, sports bars, and strip malls, I can still see the wide, wide fields. I can see the swamp before the developers came. I can see the roots and brambles along the Pocomoke River. I can see just how dark can be. Here, next to the Atlantic Ocean, under the drinking gourd, that same Big Dipper that showed Miss Harriet the way, that same Big Dipper shines down on me. Here in this land, I finally understand my grandfather. He helped deliver the bell for a Mount Zion Methodist in a horse and wagon. Walked down every Sunday morning to pull the knotted rope to ring it. He dug ditches, butchered hogs, and served newspapers. He trucked groceries from the cash and carry to stock Williams General Store at the front of the house where the porch would be. He sat on town council, hawked fish, and always liked his seafood. He ate fried porgies on one side of his mouth, spit the bones out the other. Poppy, standing in the middle of the kitchen floor, slurping down raw oysters, long before we landlocked South Jersey kids knew about anything on the half shell. Here in this land, I finally understand my grandmother. She baked pies for the men on the Work Progress Administration road crew and pulled a little wagon filled with hot food down to the schoolhouse. She grew roses and sold lilacs on South Street over in Philly. She read her Bible at the kitchen table every day at 5 a.m. She took correspondence courses from the Red Cross. She cut the stitches out of my arm herself, drew the fever with some leaves from the woods. Mom, poised on the edge of the sofa on election night, after supper dishes, waiting with hat, gloves, and pocketbook, waiting for the patrol car to drive her to the borough hall to cast the last vote. Here in this land of my people, I understand my people. Here there are voices and they speak to me. Listen now and don't forget. Whatever it is you think you're going through, however hard you think it is, it's not the Middle Passage, it's not slavery, it's not even walking to Canada. Listen now and don't forget. You are somebody's freedom. You are somebody's future. You are the promised land. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. All right. All right. So I think I'll just read a couple of new ones. This is called Everybody's Old Country. It's for Joe at a Hartford cafe. After a dozen sporadic years of after work, Joe and I finally talk. Joe in his uniform of black pants, white collared long sleeve shirt, tieless open black vest. Joe serves me cannoli, double espresso, and amaretto with an unsmiling continental formality. Dear Joe, today, because of some unnamed spark that suddenly flares up between two familiar strangers, I learned that you are from a different old country than I'd imagined. Prussia, Austria-Hungary, all of the before the wars. You are Joseph, who once taught chemistry at the university, who came to America seeking New York City journalism and jazz, whose eyes suddenly widen alive when intoning Cotton Club, Blue Note, 52nd Street. I was born La Donna. Can you imagine that my little small town colored girl dreams were anything like yours? I too went looking for America, taught at the university, loved the city, in search of poetry and cafes, art and jazz. These days, I'll take my Renaissance any way I can get it. My imaginary renovated Apollo will take me as far as anybody else's. Joe, if neither of us gets back overseas, we should at least go to Vegas. We'll go to Vegas to see their Taj Mahal and take a ride in a gondola. Even Venice, I read in the travel section of the Sunday New York Times, isn't quite Venice anymore. Don't ask me why it hurts to know that the descendants of olive growers and sheep herders have lost the land to condominia and foreclosure. Now we all understand that the armies of old men keeping shop and the armies of women sweeping were, despite the designation, quaint, essential to our dreams of city, village, countryside. Refuse at the Parthenon. That world has come to this. Dear Joe, who does not drive a social network, the next time somebody is in town, one of those beautiful cats who can still live and breathe the music, I swear I'll let you know and we'll go. We'll stay for a set or two, savor the sweet bite of Pilsner and Manhattan. We'll ride waves of sound over borders and boundaries, both real and imaginary. We'll dismiss years, fill in the gaps. We'll just sit and listen for a couple of hours. Yosef, I'll come back and leave a word or a note, just like people used to do in everybody's old country. And then here's a spring poem to end with. Fledglings, fragile and insistent as all of their species, territorial, communal, headstrong, sidelong, sensitive to the slightest movement, every glance. Yet to be anywhere other than on display in this mid-May morning sun is beside the point of their brief membership in this temporary everlasting tribe. They will attend their greedy, preening, swarming spring business under oaks, in the grass, in the borrowed family car. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.